The year in review has been one that has seen great highs and lows for your company, highlighted by the incredible job your board and management did in turning an $80 million debt into a $38 million cash balance over the final 7 months of operation of the Chartry mine. This has allowed us to stabilise the company and develop a clear strategy with respect to our corporate costs by continuing to make savings on expenses, our approach to the risk versus the reward on our political risk insurance claim and our claim under the Australia-Thailand Free Trade Agreement, our appointment of leading international law firm Clifford Chance and Dr Andrew Bell SC to prosecute the company's interests under its PRI policy and under TAFTA, and our continuation with our feasibility and exploration activities in Chile. The $200 claim under the political risk insurance policy, which your board had the foresight to increase cover under from $30 million following the temporary shutdown of Chartry in 2015, all facts that were confidential and we could not release to the market until the recent court action, has reached a critical stage with pleadings to be completed before Christmas and with parties planning for court-ordered mediation to take place during March 2018. Representatives of the insurers will be travelling to Australia for the mediation, and your company will be represented by its directors who have an extensive background and deep understanding of the policy and the circumstances giving rise to the claim. So far as your company's claim against the Royal Thai government is concerned, this has also reached a critical stage. It was unfortunately not possible to negotiate a settlement of the claim without commencing arbitral proceedings. The commencement of proceedings was a tactical step taken by your company with a view to elevating the claim to the political level in Thailand, where we expect a satisfactory resolution could ultimately be achieved. We are currently working on a confidential strategy which could result in a significant early procedural win, further improving the prospects for settlement. In Chile, we have maintained a healthy exploration budget, which appears to have made a significant discovery at Cerro Blanco West. We are now well progressed with the Nueva Esperanza feasibility study, and it is continuing. It has been suggested in certain quarters that your board has no plan for the company. This is clearly not the case. Our plan, which is current and has been well articulated, is to prosecute our rights under our political risk insurance policy, if necessary, by taking the matter to a court hearing by June or July 2018, to continue to seek settlement of our claim against the Kingdom of Thailand against a backdrop of vigorously prosecuting our rights under TAFTA, by continuing with our exploration program and feasibility study in Chile, while at the same time exploring opportunities to capitalise on its value at an optimum time. I'm proud of the relevant and diverse skills your board possesses to successfully advance the critical issues which are now before it. Your board has been working tirelessly to address a myriad of complex issues as they arise, and has been meeting on short notice at all hours of the day and night, and weekends. Last week we received a Section 249D notice requesting a spill of the board from a small UK outfit called Metal Tiger plc. Not very well known in the City of London, Metal Tiger is an AIM-listed company selling at 2p per share. And the AIM is the alternative investment market in London. And for those who don't know, AIM is the notorious penny dreadful arm of the London Stock Exchange. Metal Tiger has recently accumulated a small 6.7% stake in your company, and while some might consider it a little arrogant to try to steal control of the company's assets with such a small commitment, no doubt its backers would consider such action to be quite smart. Metal Tiger has a motley portfolio of rather insignificant assets, with one highlight being a 30% joint venture with Mod Resources Limited, which has an interesting copper-silver prospect in Botswana. It also has some applications for exploration licences over a couple of former zinc mines in northern Thailand. This apparently, qualifies the company as an expert on Thailand. The company, like all others in Thailand, has had trouble getting licences, and the prospect there's environmental uncertainty surrounding it. The company has told the market that it has delayed a proposed IPO of these assets till the first quarter of next year so they can review the new Minerals Act. Because of the standard of the assets, it is considered by experts to be highly unlikely an IPO would occur. Mr McNeely, the CEO of the company, would do well to actually read the iniquitous new Minerals Act, and he may find that in the unlikely event it ever got into production, he may well be up for royalties of up to 30%. One would have to sincerely hope that it is not one of Metal Tiger's real intentions to try to dump these inferior assets into your company. Metal Tiger has already made gratuitous comments regarding your board, predictably that it has overseen the destruction of assets, conveniently forgetting that at least half of the board were involved in the creation of them in the first place, and ignoring completely the dedication and commitment that has been exhibited by the current board trying to remedy the ills that were not of its own making. Your board is determined to restore value to your company and to your investment. And you would all know that, consistent with the past record of your company, shareholder value and returns are the paramount concern of your board. When we achieve results from our legal actions, which we fully expect to do, shareholder benefits will be at the forefront. Metal Tiger has not spelt out any specifics as to what it might do if it got control, preferring to talk in generalisations. Undoubtedly, the company is inundated with people telling them they can fix Kingsgate's problems in Thailand if they can get control. Interestingly, Thailand is awash with people that can fix your problems. We've met most of them, and for those who are young and lacking in relevant experience, it can be a costly and dangerous experience at that. Unfortunately, one of Metal Tiger's senior employees and advisors, Mr Surapon Udampormarat, is a former employee of ours. Surapon unexpectedly left our employment after misappropriating funds, buying land in his own name with our money, and other fraudulent acts. Let's look at some of the facts. Chattery was closed down arbitrarily based on totally false claims, many originally made by another former employee who coincidentally left our company due to dishonesty. These were taken up by a small gaggle of protesters, not ever representative of the local population, and a bunch of professional anti-mining NGOs. Any claim they made, despite no evidence whatsoever, was reported by a sensationalist and compliant press, and soon became too much for the bureaucrats and politicians. The rest is history. But even that seems to be movable. When Chattery Mine was closed, we were instructed to rehabilitate it immediately, to get the land back to how it was before we started mining. Strangely, following the announcement of us taking action under the Australia-Thai Free Trade Agreement, TAFTA, and clearly under instructions from their new US lawyers, the government is insisting the order was only ever temporary. The trouble is, the closure order was only the last of many impediments put up against your company by successive governments. When many years ago the royalty regime changed overnight to the highest royalties in the world, the death knell for the gold industry in Thailand was sounded. We could survive it because we were such efficient operators and we had sunk capital. But no other genuine international gold company would come, and they haven't. So whilst we are negotiating with the government still at the present time, they wish to impose further impediments to a viable industry. What does not seem to be realised by the government, and certainly not Metal Tiger, is that the combined new Minerals Act and the accompanying gold policy are so draconian and unworkable that they will ensure that there will never be a proper mining industry in Thailand. Having seen how we've been treated, no real mining companies will come. It is very easy to say that I have been around too long. However, age and longevity are a real asset when negotiating in Thailand. Besides, other people have observed that my continued presence has been the glue that has kept this company together through the adversities of the last few years. I wish to see it through and restore the value to this company that has been so cruelly taken away from it in recent years. One thing is for certain, this company will always be run for the benefit of its shareholders, not management. It will be run for the benefit of all shareholders, not the selfish interests of one minority shareholder. I thank all of those who have been loyal and supportive over a long period, both inside and outside the company, and would urge all shareholders to completely reject this recent opportunistic attempt to steal the assets of your company. Vote against to all the resolutions put up by Metal Tiger. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The company has received valid proxy votes from shareholders. I've already said that. Shareholders, you've been issued with attendance or voting cards before today's meeting. When I call for questions, could anyone wishing to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your yellow or red card. If you wait for an attendant to provide you with a microphone to speak, and stand and state your name and ask your question or make your comment. All questions should be addressed to me as chairman, and if I need, I'll direct them to more appropriate people. Please limit your questions and comments to one or two at a time. Non-shareholder visitors holding a blue card do not have a right to ask questions or make comments. Over here, are there any questions?
Can I ask a question? Ross. Switch on. Ross, it's clearly been a very tumultuous time.
State your name.
Sorry, my name is Michael McNeely.
Who are you from?
And I'm from Argonaut, represented by Argonaut Securities Metal Tiger. It's clearly been a very tumultuous time for Kingsgate. There have been CEOs coming and going. There's been no new CEO appointed. There's been conflict with the Thai government, Thai landowners, other Thai stakeholders, as well as litigation against the company's insurers. As a long-serving board member, and now executive chairman, can you please explain why the company has such relationship difficulties and how you and the board plan to establish positive relationships with key stakeholders, and explain how this can be done given the past track record of the board?
Well, thank you very much for your question, Mr. Amelia. I thought I just covered quite a few of those things in my address. You must have missed some of them.
I think there's room for open debate. I'd like to hear more.
Exactly what do you think you'd like to hear? I'd be interested.
Why has there been no new CEO?
I tried to explain to you what happened when the mine was closed, and we certainly have had nothing to do with that whatsoever.
The long-term CEO passed away, by the way. I think you should have some respect for that. And the success
I absolutely. It was a tragic event, and there were two successive CEOs
$1 billion of profit in the 2000s that this guy was largely responsible for. Yeah.
I'm very, very well aware of the past of the company,
Yeah.
and I'm very well aware of the passing away, the tragic passing away of the previous CEO. There have been two CEOs since then, both of whom had very short periods.
No, well, that's not true. One had very short, but was up to some. Well, it might be defamatory. Up to some actions that weren't in the interest of the company, and so he was terminated. The other one was there for 2 years, and he resigned. So but I mean, I dare put it back to you that you've had change of CEOs at your company, I believe, as well.
And one other CEO was basically brought on to manage a Thai mine which had been shut down illegitimately. So he didn't really have a job to do.
There's another specific area I could cover for you. I just finished with Mr. McNeely. I'll be sorry.
Obviously, there's going to be a presentation on Chile.
I'm sorry. Could you keep it up? I can't hear.
Sorry. Clearly, there'll be a presentation on Chile following this.
Yeah.
But could you provide some clarity to shareholders in the company's expenditure and cash flow, given that there's been 16 million Aussie dollars left at the end of September? You spent 6 million Aussie dollars in the last 3 months. So in particular, how do you forecast going forward for the next 12 months, given you have no cash flow? You implemented a share buyback for up to 10% of the company. You have corporate administrative costs in excess of 2 million per annum. And your Chilean asset, where you've given no clarity on the post-tax NPV. Obviously that will come out in due course with the DFS. And could you give some ideas, which obviously you will subsequently, as to whether this is a compelling investment proposition, and if so, given the 100 million market cap of the company, how you propose to fund this project, given you've used a weighted average cost of capital of 5%?
I just returned from a couple of conferences in the US, Mr. McNeely. I probably spoke to 25 or something different people, other companies, major companies, financiers, debt providers, private equity. Every man and his dog wants to be involved in this project. It is clearly one of the more superior new projects coming on in South America, and everybody recognises that. And it's in a very, very exciting area. There's another major gold find just to the north. It is an excellent project. Whichever way we decide to go, we will have no problem in doing a deal on it or financing it or whatever. I was telling somebody this the other day, and I'm saying even since we made the announcement that we were looking at all kinds of alternatives, I've been inundated with people from all over the world with proposals. And I was telling someone, I picked up my phone as I was telling them, there was another one coming from another company in Toronto. It is, we are not exaggerating, it is one of the more attractive, if not the most attractive new gold mining project coming on in South America. Do you want to, Ross Cole, would you like to comment on that cash flow question?
I'll just make one comment. If you want me to go into detail, I will. But if you go back to our annual financial statements, you'll see that our auditors signed off with respect to the company continuing on as a going concern and having sufficient cash flow to meet its obligations for at least the next 18 months. So I think that perhaps explains the situation as to what our position is with the cash and where we're likely to be, at least for the foreseeable future. So our cash burn at the moment is around about $2 million a month, and I think you stated that. And that's because we are completing the engineering feasibility study at Nuevo Esperanza, which will be finished early in calendar year 2018. We are currently doing an exploration drilling campaign, which started this month. That exploration program will drop off towards the second part of calendar year 2018 because of the seasonal activities. We also have an obligation because we have purchased water rights, and we also have a royalty to Anglo, which comes in as part of our budget expenditure. So our cash burn, as I said, at the moment is around about $2 million a month, and in the new year we see that dropping quite substantially. So at this stage we will have sufficient cash to see us through, as I said, and I'll repeat it, into the foreseeable future.
I think there should be a bit of credit where credit's due. When we got this notice from the Thai government to close down the mine in May of 2016, we had $80 million of debt. Everybody but everybody thought it'd be impossible to service, it'd be impossible to get out of it, people had us going broke, etc. Because of the board directives and management and the efficient operation of the mine And of course, yes, we had some luck in that we were always going to go through a slightly higher grade part of the deposit. There is no doubt. I never try to hide behind that. But because of the actions of the Thai government, the pit that we're operating in was come down like this, and it was very, very difficult to operate in. We managed to get 90,000 ounces of gold out at that time, an excellent job by our people. And we were able to turn that $80 million debt into a $38 million cash surplus in that time. I would put it to you that most boards would not, and most companies would not have been able to do that. I think a bit of credit where credit's due. And one of our very popular journalists here, Trevor Sykes, did give us the Lazarus Award last year. So.
Obviously, since the going concern was signed off, you've also entered into an expensive litigation process on two fronts. How will that impact your cash flow?
The going concern issue was also covered the potential of legal fees and other fees relating to both TAFTA and the potential claim going forward. We couldn't expand, as the chairman alluded to, with respect to the PRI because we were under a confidentiality arrangement with the insurers, but we effectively demonstrated to the board that we would have ongoing legal fees for a period of time, and that the figures that I'm referring to covers our or anticipated legal fees with respect to the first round of TAFTA, and also legal fees to cover us through to the final litigation process with the PRI.
We watch the cash flow very, very closely. We've had a board meeting this morning before this meeting, and everything on it is right on budget for what we expected. But on top of that, we do have a facility with our investment bankers if we need to call on that. So we are not concerned in the short term, and all of our budgeting covers all of the legal expenditure as well.
The details of that facility, would you care to comment on what they are?
It's in the
Yes,
I think it's a $15 million.
10 million at a time, 6 months payback, no interest rate explained in the accounts, and you must present a plan for payback.
The facility is $15 million with a minimum drawdown of $10 million. It's a 12-month facility from the date of executing the agreement, which, from memory, was around about the 31st of August or thereabouts. We have to give notice once if we wish to draw against the facility, and as you're right, we have to demonstrate that we have the wherewithal to be able to repay the facility, and it has to be repaid within a 6 month drawdown period. But as most, as you would know, with most lending authorities, it'll always be subject to renegotiation. But that regardless, we keep very close contact with the bank, and they're aware of our situation, and at this stage we certainly have no intention of drawing against that facility.
And it's basically an insurance policy. We've made provisions in case we do need something, which again a prudent board does.
Still have no way of paying it back.
I'm sorry?
There'd still be no way right now of paying it back without dilution.
Well, that's subject.
That may be the way you run your company.
But don't forget, we have got a claim against PRI.
And if that doesn't pan out?
Well, if that doesn't pan out, then we have to go back and work through what it's for.
I've already explained to you, we've got an incredible asset there in South America that tens of investors or whatever are aching to get into. I could do a deal tomorrow and get money out of that. I mean, there is no...
Sell Chile, is what you're saying.
I beg your pardon?
You'd have to sell off the asset in Chile?
I said before that all options are on the table. We could sell it, we could joint venture it, we could sell part of it. There's any option is on, and we are looking at that whole situation with different eventualities all the time.
And if an equity raising is required, there's a lot of long-term committed shareholders who'd be more than happy to contribute to that. So.
Not the ones I've spoken to.
Wait.
But you probably speak to your own shareholders. That'd be pretty happy. Anyway.
I'm speaking to a few now.
Yeah, well, spoken to others.
Yeah, well, who?
So this gentleman over here, the question.
A lot more than zero.
Brian Course is my name, as a shareholder. Given that the Thai government appeared to capitulate and announced that they were prepared to allow a licensing application to proceed, I take it that's going to be a very difficult process, but in your opinion, is the Chartry mine ever likely to reopen? And if so or if not, what will be its saleable value?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's very, very difficult to assess that. What is not properly understood is that under the TAFTA agreement, and in fact I recommend to you, I know we've got copies of it here, but we put out a release to the ASX a few weeks ago that explained all of the legal actions and the different components of them. Under the TAFTA agreement, if Thailand wishes to expropriate an asset, which it can do, there are a number of things that it's got to do. One of them is to pay adequate and quick compensation. Now, without us taking even the action further and going into arbitration, we could go to a court now and get a settlement on international court on that alone. That compensation has not been offered. It is part of our negotiations all the time. There are vague references to in-like and other things, and people talk without any real authority on tax breaks and royalty payments and stuff. There's a few things with that, right? Tax breaks and royalty breaks. But if tax breaks to be any good, you've got to be operating and you've got to be making money. Even for royalties, you've got to be operating and making money. The fact is, and no one up there in Thailand seems to understand, that to reopen the mine after this time is going to be a very, very costly exercise. We estimate, and it is very much an estimate at this time, that we're probably talking about $50 million. And at the best, 3 or 4 months. And that's probably at the best. That's probably an exaggeration. On top of that, because of previous actions by the Thai government, and this is what other people from outside the company, and I'm certain Mr McNeely and these people, Thai don't understand, is because of the previous actions of the Thai government and not granting certain leases and stuff, to actually operate that main pit at Chartry, it would probably take a minimum of about 6 months before you were into actual mineralisation and be able to start generating profit. So we're probably talking about a year of operation with no cash flow, no profit, etc. So this is a very serious issue and is a crucial issue in our negotiations with them. Now, of course, we're in Thailand, so the problem is that if they back off and want to pay, and they have got to pay money, they've got to, that's admitting that they're wrong, and it would be a loss of face. So there's a problem there. We're still negotiating. We've also got a number of demands that we want, as anybody, as any responsible board would want, and any shareholder would expect, that the only way that we could possibly reopen that mine is if we had an ironclad guarantee that the same kind of thing couldn't happen again. Now, I'm not saying that if you went and did something environmentally incorrect or whatever, that you shouldn't have repercussions, of course. But this was an arbitrary thing. This was just reported about with lies after lie and just reported in the press, and it became too much. There has never, ever been an environmental problem at Chartry. And we can, what's more, the department, the DPIM that runs it knows that. Every quarter they descend on the place with with 20 or 30 people and go right through the whole thing. It goes right back to the start. There is never, ever, apart from maybe a little hose with a bit of oil coming out or some little thing, one of those minor ones, there has never, ever been an environmental thing there. Now the problem is that we're going forward with these new acts that they're bringing in. The acts are prefaced on the fact that some of the things that have been said about us, environmental health and everything, are correct. Therefore they've got a whole lot of other things that they've added that's going to make things more costly to actually operate there for everybody. And if you care to go through the New Minerals Act and the gold policy, I maintain what I said before, it's draconian, it's unworkable, and will make sure that no serious company ever goes there. Now, how we get those ideas through to the powers that be, that's a very, very difficult question. So a long answer to your question, we will keep going on the premise that we can reopen. We hope we can. We hope that they will see the light and understand the problems and come along with us, despite the fact that they've done the wrong thing over and over again with us. But I have to admit, it may be a very difficult task. And that's why we do need to continue on with the arbitration proceedings, because that's probably the only potential problem, the only potential thing that will maybe bring them to their senses on.
So we go legal.
So I'll just ask again, given that there's still a substantial resource base there, it still must have a saleable value. And a new operator who came in from square one will still have to pay a substantial amount of money to get it up and running. But given the resource base is there, it could well be a viable operation, say 1 or 2 years' time. So it may well be an attractive proposition for some other operator.
Can I metal tiger back for that?
We would certainly hope so, and hope that we can get the asset into a situation that if that eventuality came, that we could sell it to somebody, right? There's a whole. We're just at the start of quite a long and protracted situation here. Is there any other questions? I'm sorry, they've got a spotlight on me here. I can't see. Yeah, gentleman there.
I would like to ask a couple of questions. My name is Ramesh Acha, shareholder.
Right.
In a recent arbitration matter, as happened with China and the Philippines, the government of China did not participate in the arbitration process and did not comply with the arbitral award. Should such a similar situation occur in our matter involving the government of Thailand, what recourse do we have if they do not participate or do not comply with our award?
Thank you for that. They will comply with it. They have this is based on the Thai-Australia Free Trade Agreement, which is important to trade between Australia and Thailand. There are specific areas of it that cover an eventuality like this, and there is protection basically for Australian companies through that agreement. There have been numerous international court cases against companies over recent years. Quite a number, even in recent times, have been successfully prosecuted. One thing I didn't know when we were looking at all these things is that under that NAFTA agreement that Donald Trump wants to get out of in America, there's been quite a few cases by American companies against Canadian companies, and they've nearly all been successful. But anyway, that's an aside. We certainly believe, we understand that when you get to the actual point of being awarded damages, that there can be some problem in getting paid out, but there are even provisions and stuff for that, and to do with assets. We believe that Thailand will cooperate. They'll fight it, there's no doubt about that, but they are very, very scared of it. The first meeting that we had with the people that are going to negotiate it, they admitted to us that they had told the government before we even started negotiating that if it went to arbitration, they didn't think they could win. So we know, and if anybody's been watching the Thai press lately, you will have seen there's been quite a few articles, particularly by academics and everything, telling the generals that they can't win, and that they should try and negotiate something beforehand. So that's another point as well. I haven't been asked about, but the Thai press over the last year or two have gone from totally opposed to us basically for a long time to a much more balanced opinion, and there's a lot of opinion there and concern that the country could be up for a very, very large sum of money, and that could be should be quite true. and even suggestions that the General, who is the head of the military government, should personally pay for it if it was the case. That's been bandied around in the press quite a bit as well.
My question effectively boils down to the question, who will enforce the arbitral award? Is it a court in Thailand, or is it the Australian government, or who will enforce it?
No, none of that. No, this is an established international procedure. Could you explain it better than me, please, Gavin? I'll get
By all means.
Yeah.
First of all, sorry, who's asking the questions? First of all, the Royal Thai government is already participating in the process. They've appointed lawyers, Arnold and Porter, who are a well-known Washington DC law firm. They've accepted service of the notice of arbitration, and Clifford Chance are in dialogue with them, arranging the various processes around the arbitration. So they will participate in the arbitration, and they're already doing so. So far as enforcing an arbitral award is concerned, first of all, it's very rare to have to enforce an arbitral award, because a failure by a government to meet an award against it following an international arbitration affects its credit ratings and its ability to borrow money on the international markets, and also affects its reputation as a destination for international capital. However, if we were required to actually enforce the arbitral award, there are several applicable international treaties which would allow us to go into a court in a jurisdiction where the Thai government had assets and enforce the award through that jurisdiction. So, speaking in generalities, if the Royal Thai government, as with many governments, had US dollar reserves, they would be typically in a bank account in New York, and we would be into a New York court so quickly and into that bank account that you wouldn't be able to blink.
Thank you very much. That clarifies it. Now, the other matter I'd like to request is, in the matter of the political risk insurance claim, when you become aware of the date of the hearing in the Supreme Court, can you please advise the shareholders so we may attend the hearing if we wish to?
I suppose we could, but I mean, you should watch the Supreme Court stuff in the Herald each day, I suppose. But look, we could probably put it up on our website or something, couldn't we? That'll be able to be done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine. Is there any other? Yes. Yeah, fine. Down here. Sorry.
If I can just make a quick comment before a question, please, Ross.
Sure.
I'm not familiar with the minutiae of any competing bids or board spills, etc. But I'd just like to remind the long-term shareholders that we knew about Kingsgate and Ross's involvement, in my case, in any case, going back to the Mike Deemer days. So over almost a quarter of a century, we saw the creation of a concept into a significant world-class mine. So throughout this period, we've seen extraordinarily large dividends, incredible wealth created for the benefit of all of us. And at all stages, the integrity of the board has remained constant. It's been one of the very few companies on the stock exchange that you can rely on the integrity and the old-fashioned values of the board. So with that in mind, I'm quite confident that through the stewardship of Ross and the board, all the trials and tribulations coming up with the Thai government or litigation, etc., will be expertly dealt with. And we just have to keep the faith. Because if we don't, the alternative is, as this gentleman alluded to, is that the shareholder base is united enough and savvy enough not to allow the company to be stolen. So if someone comes down and gives us a major check as a takeover, then we're willing to consider that. until such time, if it's going to be a few cents in the dollar and an opportunistic issue, I don't think they have considered the vigour and intelligence of the shareholder base that we can be bought out so cheaply. So that's just a comment. Coming back to my
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. Coming back to my core question, if you can just give us a range of best case scenario, worst case scenario, dealing with the Zurich matter, as if you can comment on that, as to what are our chances or the time frames associated with that. Because I appreciate that the dynamics dealing with Thailand are a bit obscure and uncertain, but at least with the litigation in our own soil, we've got a better handle as to how the process will be.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I did, in my address there, mention that we expect to be going into a meeting.
It's the first part, please.
Oh, sorry, you did. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, I'll go through it again. I'm happy to tell everybody. We are about to we are about to go into a mediation session, we believe, with the insurers in March of next year, and we certainly would be hoped for a result coming through by about June, July at the latest. The insurers have agreed to a mediation session, and this was always going to be, in going to the Supreme Court, they speed up things, but they want you to go into a mediation and talk, and we will. I mean, we've had plenty of meetings with them. We've been negotiating with them for a year. There's no, they're not denying liability. It's just a very, very large insurance policy, and they're playing ducks and drakes on little legal gobbledygooks and valuations. We're talking valuations. I think from dealing with them, we know probably what the downside is on it, and it's quite substantial. But clearly we're in a negotiating situation, and they are playing their cards, and think that we might accept a smaller payment than we're prepared to pay. At the moment, we're holding out for $200 million US.
Ross, it sounds to me a bit like the Thai government basically trying to get out of paying a lump sum as well. I mean, I'd be interested in how much we've invested. I mean, we've got pretty much the next 2 decades covered as far as the reinvestment of profits from the early 2000s. Just a rough idea of how much we've actually invested for the next 20 years would be helpful.
We've used those figures in...
North of $500 million, maybe?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you. What I can tell you, that we did produce 2 million ounces, or nearly 2 million ounces of gold, and at least 10 million ounces of silver over that period. And as we referred to by the previous questioner, we paid dividends. In fact, we paid a dividend in this company after 7 months of production. It was unheard of at the time, and we were criticised. We were criticised because mining companies don't do that. We've returned to shareholders, just for the newcomers in the room, we've returned to shareholders over $100 million in dividends over the period of production. This has been one of the great success stories here, and you can't believe how affected I am that we've been treated like we have after we did everything correctly and did everything by the book.
Yeah, I admire your patience and persistence. I mean,
you shouldn't have to just have patience, should you?
No, you shouldn't. I mean, my frustration would have been surpassed many, many months ago. You know? So it's step by step, big tick to the board. Step by step, we basically exposed these guys. They've thrown a lot of mud at the wall. I mean, there was a takeover attempt last year, a very opportunistic takeover attempt at just a few cents, and you know these takeover bids come and go. You know. So there'll probably be a bigger one in a few months' time.
I think you might find that person that's behind that might be hanging around somewhere here too. Sure. Everybody in Thailand certainly thinks that. Hang on. Yes, Mr. McNeil again.
So I have met with in the past a gentleman that you used to associate yourself with, Hiraj Consent.
Sorry?
So I have met in the past with a gentleman named Pairoj Pengponsan from Empire Asia Group. He was the chap that actually introduced Chachai Yenrambu into your business. That was overseen whilst you were obviously a director of this company, and he was clearly the chap that ultimately ended up launching a takeover bid for the company and causing a lot of difficulties. What was your judgment at the time? And I also note that Pairaj's comment to me was that you only came to him when you needed help.
PIRAP was the
Well, you
original,
know the answer to that, you know more about that.
PIRAP was the original Empire Asia investor,
Yeah,
brought to us by the
Alright.
Macquarie Banks and
TMB.
TMB.
Right, if you want a bit of a history lesson, I can give it to you, all right? We were dealing it, well, we had a partner originally, right? This is going right back, right? And then the Asian crisis came. And as you probably be aware, most companies up there nearly went out the back door and they got right back to their original businesses. So when we were about to start up the mine, we were getting Board of Investment incentives. And we went to the Board of Investment and we said, look, we've tried to comply with the Thai law and have a 51% partner, but because of the financial crisis, they've gone away. There is nobody here that's likely to put up the money or to operate with us, to be part of it. Can we get some help? So in part of our first dealings with the Thai Board of Investment, we were able to get 5 years exemption from the law on having a 51% Thai partner. That was actually part of the Board of Investment incentives. As we got further along the road in that first 5 years, we talked to advisors and everything about various structures and about doing things. And as you probably are aware, most companies operating up in Thailand, most foreign companies, operate with a preference share structure. Now, to us and our Western eyes and everything, it's a little bit like smoke and mirrors, and we were never very comfortable with it. But that's how all of the Japanese and Germans and other people then they operate there with a preference structure. I say it's like smoke and mirrors because, as you know, preference shares here are considered more to be a debt situation. Up there, what they do is they add the ordinary shares to preference shares and count them as all the same. And so you have 51% preference shares, but they have no economic benefit. Anyway, so we're talking to our advisors, which was Macquarie Bank at the time, and they had a joint venture with TMB, the Thai Military Bank. And they said that they could go and find some investors that would be able to take these preference shares. Now, you've got to be very careful under Thai law. You can't finance the investors into it. They've got to be actually investors and genuine investors, etc., etc. So we did that. TMB came up with a group of people, including the gentleman you're talking about. That was fine. We complied with Thai law. We have a nice little certificate from the Ministry of Commerce saying that yes, we're a Thai. Akara is a Thai company, a genuine Thai company. Tick tick, signed off by the minister. We got all that. No doubt, when we go to court, when we go to the arbitration, the Thais will try and say that we're not genuine, but we have this. It's definitely genuine. There's no question whatsoever. A little way along the line, we got this call from this particular gentleman. And he said, I'm in your preference shareholder. We said, hey, what's this? I'm coming down to Sydney, I want to see you. So this gentleman is a wonderful, lovely, nice person called Chachai, who I'm sure you've met. He came down here and sat in our boardroom and he told us that he was our new preference shareholder. Unbeknownst to us, he'd gone round the world out, what were there, about 6 or 8 or something, wasn't he?
He was an original shareholder of about 10%, and he gradually took everyone else out.
Was he? He was original, yeah, I got it half wrong. Right. He went round and bought, unbeknownst to us, so he said he's the new, so we said, fine. We're still uncomfortable with this preference share situation. And that's why we got on this notorious long time of trying to do an IPO up there. And we did a long exercise, spent a lot of money, and some people criticised us at the time, or since anyway. Unfortunately for us, the lawyers that had the preference shares left one little thing out. They didn't put in that it should be, that it should have an escrow. It should be held in escrow. And Mr. Chatchai was holding the shares. And in his agreement that we had with him, it said that if we wish to go to an IPO, he has to give us the shares. Well, you know what your friend Chatchai said?
He's not my friend.
He's not your friend? Well, that's good. That's really good to hear.
I've never met Chatchai.
You've gone up in my estimation.
I've never met Chatchai.
You know what he said to us? He said, $500 million, thank you.
I can
And
absolutely believe
it took us about 2 years or more to get rid of the person. And we, you know, it cost us money, and then the bugger keeps coming up and revving up. He's been around to every, I'm sure he must have knocked on your door. He's been to every company in Thailand. We were talking to one of the other major companies in Thailand last week, and we said, oh yes, he came around trying to sell it to us, yeah. Because he's got a great story these days. His brother is a general, so therefore he can get to the...
Uncle, I think.
Hey?
I think it's Willard Yenrenberg, I think it's his uncle.
Sorry, what is it?
It's his uncle.
So did you meet the uncle or Chatchai?
I haven't met either.
Oh, all right. I don't know either. It's some story like that. He tells that you know that he's brother or something. And someone said it to me the other day, and I said, "Mate, this is Thailand." I said, "Those generals are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere." We had one working. I tell that. We had one working for us. A very nice guy, a very quiet guy. And everything. The guys in the office used to call him the corporal dressed up as the general. You know. Anyway.
What about your, sorry? What
Sorry?
about the
Can
current...
you just hold a bit on?
Sorry.
I'm getting a bit short of hearing here. My wife wants me to get a hearing aid.
Low battery, unfortunately.
Have we got another one?
I'll project. It's fine.
I'm sorry if you have a very low voice. I'm not being derogatory. I really can't.
I can't hear you here either.
Nuchari Selasut, the current preference shareholder.
I still can't hear you either from here.
Sorry, what was it again?
Nuchari Selasut. Yeah, who is she? And is she the wife of one of the contractors?
Nuchari is one of our greatest supporters up there, a lovely lady. She was married to an Australian who was the original owner of the Lotus Hall Group, and unfortunately, a guy called Max Brown, and unfortunately, God, it's got to be about 10 years ago or more, isn't it? On with track of time, he passed away. She continued the business on, and she's been a great loyal supporter, and you know we've worked very closely with her all the time. She is basically the mining contractor. She does other stuff for for EGAT and some of the other coal deposits up there. She has worked. They did have a contract for Sepon originally, and they had the one for the Pan Australia one in Laos too, didn't they? But yeah, she's a very good person. She was replaced, that wonderful person Chatchai, after we got rid of him. And she's been a loyal preference sharer ever since, shareholder ever since. And it's all above board. It's all her own money, and she borrowed some money and stuff and everything. It's a very, very good relationship. By the way, I've got to tell you, Chatchai tried to contact her the other day. She didn't talk to him, but no doubt he was thinking that he might be able to try and do the same trick again. I don't know. Anyway.
I've obviously not contacted Chatchai, nor has he contacted me.
Right. Well, I think you should keep it that way. Anyway.
I actually met with Pairaj and I said to him, what do you think of Chatchai? Because he seems like a tricky bugger. I'll admit that.
Good idea.
I will say that we do work with a Thai partner who has a very long track record in investment banking, who's done lots of deals, who has never tricked a foreign company, and believes that we can provide a solution to get the mine back up and running.
Yeah, well, as I said in my address, I can introduce you to quite a few people that will tell you they can, and we've certainly met quite a few of them. So good luck. Sorry, there's another one up here, so I didn't even see it.
Yeah.
I'd just like
Okay,
to,
Ted.
Near.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, that congratulations on the Zurich insurance deal, $200 million US. I think a brilliant decision of the company to take that insurance, and I wish you well, and I'm sure you will succeed in the claiming of that money, and congratulations to you and the board.
Thank you very much. So, are there any other questions? Well, in that case, we might get on to the rest of the meeting, eh? The formal business of the meeting. The last meeting of shareholders was a general meeting held on the 24th of November 2016. At that meeting, all resolutions were carried. The minutes are tabled here for inspection. Down here. I would like to move that the minutes of that meeting be taken as read and confirmed. I'll ask for a second for that motion. Mr. Griffiths, thank you. Is there any discussion? No? Ladies and gentlemen, the motion will now be put to the vote by show of yellow cards. Those in favour, please raise your yellow card. Against? Oh, thank you very much. This is about minutes of the last meeting, which I don't think they were out. I declare the motion carried. I now refer you to the notice of meeting dated 18th of October 2017. You'll note that the formal business of the meeting comprises the following matters. First item of business is to receive and consider the annual financial report, Directors' report and Auditors' report to shareholders for the year ended 30th of June 2017. We have three resolutions. Resolution 1, to re-elect Sharon Skeggs as the Director of the company. Resolution 2, to re-elect Peter Alexander as the Director of the company. And Resolution 3, approval of the remuneration report for the year ended 30th of June 2017. I would like to move that the notice of meeting be taken as read. Ask for a second for that motion. Mr. Ferguson, thank you. Is there any discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, the motion now be put by a show of yellow cards. Those in favour, please show your yellow card. Those against? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. The first item of business is to receive and consider the Directors' report, Auditors' report, and the company statements of the company as set out in the 2017 annual report. It is no longer necessary for the meeting to formally approve financial statements, but I'd now ask for any questions on the statements. Now, as I said before, we have representatives of Pricewaterhouse here, Mark Upcroft and Francois, present and available to take questions if need be. Are there any questions? No? Thank you very much. Good. I'll move to the first resolution, the re-election of Sharon Skeggs as the Director, Resolution 1. The company's constitution requires that at each AGM, 1/3 of the company's directors, or if their number is not a multiple of 3, then the number nearest to that 1/3 must retire from office. The re-election of Sharon Skeggs is being considered by the company's nomination committee and board. Ms Skeggs abstained from voting on her re-election at both meetings, and the board recommends unanimously that the members vote in favour of the re-election of Sharon Skeggs as the Director. I now formally put the motion to be considered. That Sharon Skeggs, a Director of the company retiring in accordance with the company's constitution and the ASX listing rules, and being eligible and having signified her candidature for the office, be re-elected as the Director of the company. The proxy votes received by the company in relation to this resolution are as follows. You might notice I'm not a technical genius. Yeah, it's blank at the moment. proxy votes received by the company in relation to this resolution as follows. Of the valid proxy votes received, 59,296,089 votes were for the motion, 18,514,563 were against the motion, 202,963 votes abstained, and 10,075,744 were discretionary. I ask for a seconder for the motion. Mr. Emery, thanks. As I previously advised, I now call a poll on this resolution, with the poll to be held following consideration of all the resolutions being put to the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any discussion? I'd just like to say a little bit about Sharon. I should have said it before I did that. Those that know me know that I'm probably the least politically correct person you'll come across. So I can assure you that Sharon Skeggs is not here to make up the numbers or because of some government-induced quota or etc. etc. She's here because she's a very valuable participant in our company. She doesn't, as you would well know, come from a mining background. But the rise of social media as a forum for anti-mining movements in the world over has necessitated mining companies becoming more savvy in communicating with stakeholders. Sharon had over 15 years as the director of Saatchi & Saatchi. She's one of Australia's leading marketing and communication experts. Her background is advising major Australian corporations on stakeholder communications via mainstream and social media strategies, and it's invaluable and unique to your board. I commend, when you do vote for Sharon. The second resolution is the re-election of Peter Alexander as a director of our company. The company's constitution requires that each AGM 1/3 of the company's directors enter the number not multiple of 3, then the number nearest to the 1/3 must retire from office. In accordance with this requirement, Peter Alexander retires as a director and offers himself for re-election as a director. The re-election of Peter Alexander has been considered by the company's nomination committee and board. Mr. Alexander abstained from voting on his re-election at both meetings. The board recommends that members vote in favour of the re-election of Peter Alexander as a director. Peter, as you probably know, is a long-time geologist. He probably doesn't want to say it's a long time, but he's had extensive experience in Australia and overseas in geological positions and running mines and etc. etc. And he is a valuable contributor to our board. At the moment, of course, we're doing a feasibility study and doing more exploration work over in Chile, and his input on what we're doing and what it means, etc., is quite invaluable to the rest of the board. So I also recommend voting for Peter. I'd like to now formally put the motion to be considered. That Peter Alexander, a director of the company, retiring by rotation in accordance with the company's constitution and the ASX listing rules, and being eligible and having signified his candidature for the office, be re-elected as a director of the company. The proxy votes received by the company in relation to this resolution are as follows. Of the valid proxy votes received, 60,739,192 votes were for the motion, 2,117,843 votes were against the motion, 15,156,513 votes abstained, and 10,075,811 votes were discretionary. I would ask for a seconder for the motion. Mr. Ferguson, thanks. Consistent with my previous statement at the beginning of the meeting, I now call a poll on this resolution, with the poll to be held following consideration of all the resolutions being put to the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any discussion? The third resolution is the approval of the remuneration report. I now formally move the third resolution to consider and if thought fit to pass the following non-binding resolution as an ordinary resolution adopting the remuneration report for the year ended 30th of June 2017. Of the valid proxy votes received, 51,592,109 votes were for the motion, 20,666,557 votes were against the motion, 506,494 votes abstained, and 10,009,701 votes were discretionary. I ask for a second for that motion. No, previously did. Thank you. As I previously advised, I now call for a poll on this resolution, that the poll will be held following consideration of all the resolutions being put to the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any discussion? Well, as allowed under Rule 10.15 of the company's constitution, a poll has been called with respect to each of the resolutions, and I'd appoint Link Market Services Limited, the company's share registry, as scrutineers to conduct the polls. The result of each poll will be reported by the scrutineers to me and will be declared at the end of the meeting. You were given voting forms at reception. Is there anyone who is entitled to vote and have not received a voting form from the reception area? No one?
Yes, back. Ross, right at the back.
Sorry? Oh, I can't see. Right, could you see the link? Yeah, thanks very much. Very good. Seeing that all the rest of you have your voting forms, we're now ready to take the polls, and I remind you you're voting on resolutions 1, 2 and 3, the 3 resolutions. If you could please record your votes for or against the resolutions by ticking the appropriate box on the voting form for resolutions. Has everyone had a chance? That's not a terribly laborious task, I know. If everyone has completed their voting forms, if anyone would like a little more time, please raise your hand. I know we've got a gentleman out there, so we might go a little bit. Anyway, could the staff, I think, please collect the voting forms. Yeah, there's always one. All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the voting on this resolution, and we'll have the results of those later in the meeting. What I'd like to well, if there's no further questions on anything, I'd like to move on and like to introduce Ron James to you. He's a consulting geologist. Ron has worked for us for a number of years, has left but is working on a consultancy basis with us at the moment. We'll take questions at the conclusion of this presentation. We have microphones available. If you have a question, you please wait for a microphone to talk to you, etc. Ron, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present the exploration results from Nueva Esperanza, and thank you to the board for this opportunity, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been looking at this photograph for a little while, so I thought I might just explain a little bit of what we're seeing here. We're looking towards Argentina. We're looking east, Everything in the foreground here is part of the Nueva Esperanza project, not including those volcanoes there. The mountains here are about 6,000 meters high, and we're sitting in a position here from the photograph of about 5,000 meters. And the project area is actually pretty much this area in here. That's the Chimberos remnant pit, which I'll be talking about later on. And I'll also be talking about a new discovery in Cerro Blanco West, which is roughly in this area here. The Arqueros deposit is in this little gully in here, and the Teterita deposit, which I'll also refer to, is over here roughly. So that just explains that slide that has been in the backdrop for a little while. Disclaimers, I don't think everyone's ever read one of these. So Kingsgate, as we all know, has been a producer in the past. It's produced out of two mines, one in Thailand and one in Australia. But since the closure of the Chatri mine, the strategic focus has been towards Chile. It had been there before, but now it's even more concentrated. We basically have been successful there. We've been successful in acquisition and discoveries, and we will continue to grow that very prospective prospect. Strategy is actually to continue the work that we're doing in Nueva Esperanza on the feasibility side, the permitting side, the exploration, and as well, obviously, any opportunistic mergers and acquisitions. Kingsgate is a very experienced epithermal gold company. For a long time, Gavin Thomas was our CEO, and his DNA was implanted on every geologist that works for the company. He was one of the discoverers of the Lihir gold mine, so he knew a thing or two, and he knew that this particular prospect was a bull terrier, in his own words. And I'm just sorry that obviously that he's not with us anymore, but that he hasn't been able to see some of the results that we've gained since he's departed. The advantage of the Nueva Esperanza property is that it's essentially a brownfields exploration play. It's had mining production, both underground and from open pit. Obviously, the very highest grades, some of the highest grades have been mined, but there's a considerable remnant mineralization, and there's a number of targets around, which I'll show you in a moment, that are very prospective, and we're currently prioritizing those targets as a primary exploration focus. But at the same time, a new business, a VP, a Vice President of Business Development and Exploration has been appointed to the company, also a very experienced geologist, and he's looking at greenfields exploration and in the Maricunga region and reviewing a number of very exciting projects. So a quick overview of Nueva Esperanza. A strategy is to we have actually built off a pre-feasibility study that we completed last year. It's been reviewed in detail by the chosen consultants, Arsenco, and they went into a great deal of detail to prove that our numbers were actually very, very close to what they got. So it has had an independent audit, and of course we will continue to explore and add life to the project. As I mentioned before, there has been mining of bonanza grades in a fragmented ownership on this property, but this is the first time, Kingsgate, that actually encapsulates whole of the Nueva Esperanza assets. It has a huge alteration footprint, which means in non-technical terms that it's the rocks that are prospective for mineralization. We can actually recognize them where they're not undercover. But that's kind of like the canvas for where we look for deposits. There's some of the core issues in Chile are to do with power and water, and those have been secured by the company. We are in the process of converting this pre-feasibility study into a feasibility study, and there's a team actively working on that right now. It's quite an extensive team. And we continue with exploration. We have a drill rig on the ground, drilling as we speak. I'll talk about that a little bit further later. And as mentioned by the chairman, there is a timeline. and a pretty healthy budget to develop this project and continue exploration. Since the acquisition by Kingsgate, we've actually grown the asset by a combination of acquisition and exploration success to almost doubling its size. I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, this is a 3-minute flyover, which I will show you. It has been shown before, but there's probably some people that haven't seen it. It's 3.5 minutes, and it's quite helpful to give you an overview. Oops, back the other way. Yeah. I'll just comment a little bit to it. Obviously that's we're up in the northern part of Chile. It's a very dry part of the world. It's one of the driest land deserts in the world, actually. And the Maricunga belt is a very productive belt with a number of quite major deposits, and both still in resource and some have been mined out, and some are in the process of still being mined. So we're traveling north and looking through the various different mines and projects, their resources in gold and silver. What the histograms show, obviously Mina Maricunga is only silver. De la Pepa, Volcan, which is volcano in Spanish. Cerro Maricunga, it's in development, it's in that advanced pre-feasibility stage. La Coipa is actually closed at the moment. Nueva Esperanza, as we know. And very importantly, this Salares Norte, which extends the Maricunga further north by about 50 kilometers from what it was known to be in the past, which really does open up quite a few major opportunities for exploration. This is the mining tenement that we have, the concession, and these are the various deposit names for actually locations that do contain silver and gold. Teterita, this is the drilling in Teterita, sort of look like an X-ray view of it, and a solid of the silver ore body that is contained, and that's the pit shell that would extract that mineralization. You can see it's very shallow. The tops of the drill holes correspond to the natural surface, the topography. And this is still Teterita, looking at it from the surface, the drill hole collars in the little black cubes. We're flying over into Arqueros. You can see Arqueros transects a valley. That's all the drilling, including underground drilling. There's a substantial amount of drilling in this project. The silver system and then the gold feeder systems that actually pop through into the silver system. So the yellow solids are the gold mineralization. That was mined at 7 grams per ton actually from underground mining. And then you can see some of the old workings which we've been down into and got a good view of the ore body. And now we fly through Chimberos. That's a pit that's been mined out by Kinross. Mantos de Oro was the group that is essentially owned by Kinross. They've picked out the highest grades. That would be the solid that existed there. Some of that is remnant at the moment. And as we go to the west, we find the lovely Chimberos gold system that we discovered a couple of years ago. We believe that there's more of those around. The reason it wasn't discovered by the previous owners is because it was undercover. It didn't expose. It wasn't exposed. In fact, they had a haul road running right over it, which I'll show you later on. Ironically, the best value of that deposit was right underneath their feet. So that's the alteration. That red is the alteration footprint, 45 square kilometers. And there are various hits around the neighborhood, if you like. Obviously the focus for us is gold, and the gold and silver are closely associated. So by finding silver, we're hoping that we'll find gold as well. As I mentioned before, the characteristics of the Maricunga is that the southern portion of it is predominantly porphyry with gold and copper. Some of these are very big deposits, but they're very low grade. Some are even lower than half a gram, which is why even though they have big figures for their resource, they're not in operation. And then the northern part is the epithermal system. They're a little bit easier to process. Generally speaking, they're friendlier ore types, and particularly in the oxide zone, especially in the oxide zone. I've mentioned before, Salares Norte up here. Basically, it was thought that round about Nueva Esperanza was the northern limit, so it's opened up at least 50 kilometers, and another explorers are way up here, still finding some very interesting occurrences of gold. So it's a big field, it's an evolving field, there's majors that are coming in. I heard recently the Newcrest is actually looking at getting into Chile, we believe it's extremely productive. And so this is actually a real number. If you add up all those, you do get 100-odd million ounces of gold equivalent. Gold equivalent is really basically factoring the silver and adding it to the gold if there is no gold, or combining both together. It's a way of combining both metals together, and the formula for that is in here. Salares Norte, 3.7 million ounces, predominantly gold. It's only 45 silver, but 4.2. In fact, that's 4.5 now. And even though that project, Salares Norte, is in feasibility study and permitting, exploration continues. And we know from the grapevine that they're getting some very good results. And Goldfield are keeping it quiet. This is actually their key exploration asset at the moment. Nueva Esperanza, historic bonanza silver. We've consolidated this in 2012. We've done quite a lot of work, mostly drilling, and we had a breakthrough with the discovery of gold, and also at one stage the project was encumbered by extremely high power costs, because the power to bring to Nueva Esperanza had to come all the way from Patagonia, practically, or not just north of Patagonia, in the Lakes District, and had to be carried all the way up to here, and then there was a gap in here between that and the northern power system. So now there's numerous solar plants that are actually connecting the whole system through, and so that's brought the power down quite significantly, and that's been a very major contribution to making the project profitable. Arqueros, I mentioned before, had 7 grams. At one stage, Chimberos was being carted, the ore from Chimberos that you saw in that, was being carted 40 kilometers over the mountains at over 5,000 meters elevation and being taken down to La Coipa. They stopped La Coipa production in order to get that Chimberos ore through the mill, because it was the richest gold mine in the world at that time. Sorry, silver mine, sorry, thanks Ross. Yeah, she was gold. It is gold. We know that now. It has significant gold. So, so a little bit. I don't want to bore you with technical details, but yes, epithermal means that the mineralization is formed fairly close to the surface. Brownfields is what we refer to as deposits or occurrences that have exploration potential, have some sort of association of gold or silver, and we believe there's tremendous growth potential here. I did actually have a slide early on where I had the harbour bridge for scale, but it's too small, you can't even see it. Might get back to that if you're interested. Oh, there it is. Yeah. The harbour bridge is here. Okay, that gives you some sense of the scale of these individual deposits that we already have. And we've conducted a blast hole drilling campaign in 15 and 16, which significantly added to our knowledge of the system, because a lot of this area is under sort of scree cover, so it's not exposed. This slide here is a model adapted from Richard Silto, who's a great believer in this project. He's one of the preeminent geologists in the world to this day. In South America, he's the guru of gold and silver epithermal land deposits. He's one of the most written. He's got over 100 papers to his name in 2 books. He is really the guru, and he's been to this project as recently as 2 years ago, and he was very excited about it. What's interesting is that our various deposits seem to lie into different parts of this epithermal system, which means that there's this variety in here. It's not a simple system, and obviously we don't know the arrangement of volcanoes that were responsible for this mineralization, because they're eroded, but it's definitely have a pretty good idea of where it is, the Cerro Bravo system. So the thing that's also become quite interesting recently is that the gold that we found at Chimberos was very closely associated with the dacite dome, and that's very much the case at La Coipa and also at Salares Norte. So what we're doing is we're actually integrating what we've learned from La Coipa. We've acquired a lot of that information, what we've learned from Salares Norte, and we're integrating that into our own models so that we can actually use those tools to better plan our exploration. So this is a little bit how, kind of as technical as I'm going to get. We look at various layers of data, geochemistry, geophysics, remote sensing data, alteration mapping, mapping of structures and geology, and we combine all those different layers of data to develop a prospectivity map that tells us kind of a ranking of where we would want to go next, or what are the priorities or the targets that we want to pursue. And that's recently led to the discovery of the Cerro Blanco West. Now that's fairly recent. It's Kingsgate's latest discovery. As I said, there's a drill rig there right now working on that. And we've had some pretty exciting results. It's largely undercover. That's why it wasn't known about previously. So it's a good deal of this is scree cover. These lines, the green dots are the holes that we've drilled to date, and some of these red ones are actually drilled now. The program has been in place for about a month since the season became available to us, and I can say that we are getting some pretty interesting results, and we expect some assay results coming back in the next few weeks. But the geologists on the field are saying that the rocks look very similar to the rocks that we actually got mineralization in, so we're very excited about that. And we are stepping out on 100-meter line spacing, so we're not actually doing any infill drilling here. We're really trying to expand the footprint of the mineralization, and also we have this notion that working near these domes is very important from the point of view of trying to find gold mineralization. It's also very deeply oxidized, which is actually a very important feature. The deep oxidation is indication that the system is still alive and well, and it's also amenable to processing, because if the mineralization is not oxidized, it becomes difficult for processing. This is a cross-section of the kind of mineralization that we're getting at Cerro Blanco. So this is like a slice, a horizontal, a vertical slice through the drilling, and gives you some idea of the kind of intersections which are all new. I mentioned a little bit about the resource growth there when we acquired Laguna Resources, so when the previous owners of this project. We basically acquired 28 million tons for about 1 million ounces of gold equivalent. That's all we had. We had this Arqueros mining concession with the Arqueros deposit in there, and the remnant mineralization of that constituted this 28 million tons. The following year, we acquired the Esperanza leases, which we later renamed Nueva Esperanza, and that's this big outline here, which contained the Chimberos and the Vidit pit. And by acquisition, we added 40% from these two deposits. And then a couple of years later, we discovered Chimberos gold and added another 400,000 or 500,000 ounces, 500,000 ounces. And that's a 90% growth since we actually went in there in 2012, since we got full control of it in 2012. And this is what the Chimberos gold system looks like. This is underlying this image is the Google Earth view of the Chimberos pit that was mined by Kinross. And you can see they were hauling ore out of here right over this, out of this absolute beautiful mineralization sitting barely 10 meters beneath the surface. And when I asked, why haven't we drilled this area here? They said, oh no, it's drilled. They said, oh, they did drill it. Yeah, they did. So what's the story? Oh, they didn't assay for gold. So they assayed only for silver. So they actually drilled this thing. They hit a breccia, and they didn't assay for gold. We didn't have any of the cuttings, but we had a sniff of gold on the edge here, and that's how we followed this thing up. And we had one intersection there of 170 meters at 2.79 grams a ton gold. That included 36 meters, I think I wrote it down here, yes, 36 meters at 8.6 grams of gold and 177 grams of silver in that same drill hole. And this is, I wish, Gavin had been around to see this, because he would have given it the definite bull terrier status for sure. And we know there's more of these around. They're undercover, obviously, because we've covered all the surface. We've explored the surface. And we're following it up. We have a good team in Chile, and we're in the process of following up. And we are very, very confident that we are going to increase this system quite substantially. And I'm talking by substantially, I mean by millions of ounces. That's the kind of footprint that this has. Bear in mind that here in La Coipa, right, this is the La Coipa, which produced 3.5 million ounces of gold and 230 million ounces of silver, has a very similar operational footprint. These images are not doctored, these are just straight out of a satellite, although there's probably some image enhancing, but they're not differentially doctored. So you can see that the operational footprint is quite similar. And importantly, here in La Coipa, they were still discovering things 10, 20 years after they started mining production. So I'm fully confident that exactly the same thing is going to happen because the two deposits are so incredibly similar. They're similar in age, they're similar in alteration style, and they're similar in the textures that you see. And I'm very encouraged by that. And Alqueros Norte is giving us a taste of what could be out there. I mean, we've been talking, 1 or 2 grams here, but they've got 4.5 grams. And again, the entire deposit at Saladas Norte is buried under cover of about anywhere between 10 and 30 meters of cover. So, there's techniques for looking under cover, and we're using those techniques. You can't really see under cover, it's an expression that geologists use, but it's sort of things that guide us to look under cover. So this is our business strategy and a pipeline. We've got generative targets here, down here at the bottom. These are regional, broad-based target creation. We've had people coming to us that have looked for copper in the area, and they're not interested in looking for gold, or they don't have the expertise in looking for gold. So we're processing those sets of data. We obviously have the Maricunga regional targets with greenfields exploration. We've had teams out there looking around in places that are still open. We've mostly been discussing this area here because obviously that's the concrete focus in front of us right now in terms of developing the project. And of course we're in feasibility study with the 3 known deposits. So for the current financial year, the workflow that we have envisaged is obviously progress the feasibility study and also on a separate division, the permitting side of things. Continue engaging the community as we have. We're fortunate that there are really no resident members of the community here, but there are these tribal groups that have essentially certain rights to pass by the area or pasture. We will be doing some more corroboratory work on the existing deposits, as I mentioned in permitting. So we're using this, all the latest information that we can gather, and we're in the process of negotiating information from previous owners that have some very fancy data sets. And we're drilling as we speak, and we're getting some pretty interesting results that we hope to be reporting in some weeks ahead. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, question over here.
Where's the water coming from?
Yes, I can show you where the water is coming from. It's coming from a bore field in the plains down here. So it's actually bore water.
Is it enough?
Yes, more than enough actually. Yeah, we're very fortunate. And also it's important that a lot of the new projects in Chile now are being permitted only if they bring in water from the sea. But this project went through a process where we were allowed to extract bore water. And I think Chairman made a reference to paying royalty for some of that water because we actually acquired. Over there, the water rights are held separately. And another company has those water rights even though they don't have a project there. They were a previous owner of this project. And we actually have to pay royalties even though we're not using the water because it kind of secures that water right.
We have found some on our properties as well.
And we have found water on our property, but that's a permitting process that has to go through as well before we can actually use our own water.
Is the area prone to earthquakes? Or
Yes, yes it is. Yeah. It's not prone for flooding or anything like that because it only snows here. The only precipitation that you get here is snow. There's no rain. But it is prone for earthquakes. The whole of the western coast of South America is, for that matter. And that's built into our feasibility study.
And what about volcanic activity? You
No,
mentioned
no volcano. This was former volcanoes, and there hasn't been volcanic activity here. There are some active volcanoes further out to the east, but in the area that we are, these are all extinct volcanoes. There's no hydrothermal activity, no hot water activity anymore. All that activity happened while all this gold and silver was being deposited while the volcanoes were active. So these are, if you like fossilized, volcanoes. Any other questions?
Just want to check, are we talking open pit mining like Jackson?
Yes, definitely open pit mining. Yeah. So that's our target. Obviously, if we find something that's deep and high grade, we'll consider an underground operation as well.
Much later.
That comes later because it's much more expensive to explore for that.
Yeah, well, I like
drilling deeper. We're looking for the low-hanging fruit at the moment. That's basically.
It's Kingsgate's specialty. I mean, seeing
Correct.
what's happened with the pit in Thailand, which was once a hill.
Correct.
So a hill was turned into a very successful, safe open pit mining.
Hills are great because they actually work in your favour in terms of strip ratio. You have to, the nature's taken away some of the waste rock, and you're actually they're really quite nice to work with hills.
That's great. I mean, the fact that Kingsgate's done this already in Thailand, which is not a mining-friendly jurisdiction, in fact, has just been recently taken over by a regime with no governing experience whatsoever and ruined it. But the fact that we've done this in a non-mining-friendly jurisdiction, I think we've got the team to do it again, and thanks to Ross for his time at the helm as well, and I hope that's going to continue for many years to come.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your attention.